I think we talked about this a little bit on Almost Adults, but what's your goal with Mostly Minutia? Just to have other people tell their story?
Well, I'd like to start moving into some more long-form interviews with people and like playing them straight up.
Do you want to...
Maybe editing down pauses and stuff? Yours?
Yeah, let's do a long form.
Well, yours, I have it a little bit planned out, but it mostly will be played long form. I'm Mostly Minutia.
All right. So, yeah.
But let me start this off with saying, so I'll probably end up doing a voiceover intro for this episode.
Hang on. Can I guess the intro?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
This is Gage. I wouldn't know him, and you wouldn't have picked him out of a crowd, but he stood out a year ago at the LA Podfest. Here's a clip of him saying stuff. Burr, 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 burr. And this is Gage saying stuff, and now he's one of my best friends here on Mostly Minutia.
That's exactly how it's going to go, actually.
Hey, folks, happy Thanksgiving. You holding up? You doing all right? Well,
So as not to confuse the listener, playing under this is the 2015 Thanksgiving episode of WTF with Marc Maron.
All right, let's start this episode. This was a live episode I did at LA Podfest. Enjoy. Lock the gate!
If you don't know Marc Maron, his podcast WTF is one of my favorite podcasts. I love Marc Maron. He's a prolific interviewer. He's extremely present when he interviews his guests, which is something I love about him. And he does all his interviews from his garage. But last year, he recorded this episode live at the LA Podfest, which I attended.
I'm happy to be here. I say that because it's a habit.
He opens up the episode with a stream of consciousness, kind of lets you in on his humanness.
And then this is a fine way to open a show. It's amazing how easily we've all adapted to this utterly non-reflective but self-consumed culture. Elaborate shallowness based on lifestyle choice and vanity. Mutated egos seeking recognition, calling that individuality. And then the next line says, forget happy, I want to be chipper.
And then before he brings his guests out, he does a Q&A with the audience. And I'm sitting in an aisle seat right next to the microphone that everyone's coming up to.
You're asking me about, like, how conscious am I of being a caricature of myself?
Yeah,
Kinda.
Do you actively try to defeat that, or...
So, something that's really bizarre and serendipitous is that as I was waiting in line for WTF, there was a younger guy walking around, and for some reason he stood out to me. This guy is Gage Agnew, who's now my friend. And the reason I took notice of Gage is because Gage has a very distinctive look. It's possibly something to do with his eyes. He kind of looks like a fox, perhaps. He kind of just stands out. So Marc Maron does his Q&A, and he funnels through several people. He's just about to bring out his guests when Gage approaches the mic.
All right. Let's begin the show. Wait, you okay? Did you need more attention? What's up? No, come on. No, tell me. Now I'm the asshole?
I'm the asshole for making you look like an asshole.
No, you didn't. You're
though
okay,
I am an asshole. Okay.
You're actually more like me than the other guy. Go ahead.
I'm actually a little charmed by that. This is actually my first WTF. Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask, what's your favorite episode?
Come on. Who's in charge? Get the diapers. All right, go ahead.
I'm actually new to LA, and I was wondering
how old are you?
I'm only a 21 babby boy.
And you just moved here?
I just moved
on
here.
On your own?
On my own.
Are you in school?
No, sir.
What's your plan?
I was just, I wanted to know...
I'm getting sad.
I just know where the line was between networking and being talented.
You're asking the wrong guy.
All right, thank you.
Here, no, listen. There are people that are fundamentally untalented that can have great success because their ambition is so focused and they work hard. And there are people that are talented that have no success because their talent drains them of their ability to be successful. So, you got to find somewhere in between. If you are talented, you should try to figure out what those are and what the parameters are and how you can use them to help you as opposed to hurt you. If you're not talented, you're going to have to work really hard, and you'll probably become more successful than a lot of your talented friends. All right.
Thank you very much.
Since this recording, Gage has started his own podcast called Almost Adults, which he co-hosts with his good friend Jean-Claude Guidi. Both are extremely generous hosts. They're the yin to each other's yang. And as fate would have it, Gage and I did finally become friends through another friend's podcast called Thank You Internet. And to our delight, we even discovered we share a birthday. Welcome to Mostly Minutia. I'm Colleen Lindell. This is episode 22, Thanksgiving with Gage Agnew. So I've been wanting to interview you for almost a year now. The time that I realized I really wanted to interview you was last year during Thanksgiving. You left a voicemail on the Thank You Internet podcast.
I did.
So I hadn't met you at that time, but oddly enough, I already knew who you were.
Right.
Because I had seen you at the LA Podfest.
Yes. I asked a question for Mr. Marc Maron.
What made you want to attend the WTF live broadcast in the first place? Like, why did you? There were so many other podcasts that were going on. Why did you go to that one?
Wow. Well, this is over a year ago, so I don't know the exact mindset I was in, but...
Well, you didn't even have your podcast back then, and you were at the Los Angeles Podfest. I mean, why were you there?
I started listening to podcasts very early on because I started listening to My Brother and Me, which was recommended by my good friend Bobby. And My Brother and Me and their D&D podcast was at the LA Podfest. And I just heard WTF from a bunch of other people. And so I'm like, oh, well, if this is like big fish of all podcasts, I should probably attend it and listen to it.
What made you want to ask your question?
I remember at the time I was just feeling very overwhelmed because I just moved to LA. I'm in this wealth of talented people. Some relationships were becoming a little more obsolete because I'm on the other side of the country right now. I can't be friends with everyone I used to be friends with in college or in high school. And so I kind of knew I had to sort of make a new group of friends in LA, and that's something very difficult to do as sort of an adult in a new place, is to make new friends. Because when you're at school, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier because you're in the same classes, you have something sort of in common. And when you're an adult, you're just kind of working. Most people aren't incredibly passionate or incredibly 100% satisfied where they're at. And I wanted to make friends, but at the same time, I wanted to be talented and make the right friends. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I figured Marc Maron was sort of a professional in that field, having old friends and having new friends and traveling a lot. So that's why I asked. Mm-hmm. So,
and it's a little over a year since you moved. Like, what's transpired in the last year?
Geez, that's a lot. I think my priorities are a little more focused as of now, because at the beginning, I just wanted to make videos. I wanted to make stories. I wanted to make something. And now I have this podcast that I need to keep on top of. I think sort of how I view things as a creator are a little bit different. I'm a bit wide-eyed about the whole LA experience. Whenever people ask me, how's LA from Florida, I'm like, it's great. Everyone tries to help out everyone here. Mm-hmm. And everyone's trying to help each other out, but it's cutthroat at the same time. I know that's a bit contradictory, but it's true.
And when did you decide that how did you know you wanted to move to LA? I know you said that you had it in your mind, but...
Well, I grew up, initially I grew up in Virginia, and I had a good time. I was in a Catholic school, and then when I went to third grade, I moved to Florida. Had a lot of fun there, and parents are both incredible people. My mother and father are very, very supportive of me and whatever I do. Initially, I wanted to be an actor and tell jokes because in the 5th grade, I did this like Jerry Seinfeld sort of routine for the talent show, where I just recited his stand-up. And like I listened to that front and back. I couldn't tell you how many times. Never watched Seinfeld though, which was interesting. As an actor, I felt like I was just saying whatever people gave to me. And when I was in the 9th grade, I had a choice between drama and TV production, and I decided to go the different route and go TV production. And I just fell in love with it instantly. I loved just making stories, even if they were like derivative and not very good. I just love making stuff and editing stories to my liking. And I had this teacher named Shane Sauer who graduated from FSU. And since Mr. Sauer went to FSU, that's where I wanted to go. So that's the only place I applied. And I got into the actual school, but I didn't get into the film school, which broke my heart, because I figured if I went there, I had the golden ticket to go anywhere else. I feel like a lot of my life, I've always just wanted that golden ticket to kind of do everything, but life isn't really like that. I feel like film school was sort of that next golden ticket for me, and it just didn't happen. In a sense, I'm sort of glad it didn't happen, because I got to meet really cool people. I met my buddy Carlos, I met Kat, I met John Claude. It was a lot of fun. We did exactly what I was doing in high school, just going out and shooting videos and telling stories. That's what I love to do.
Tell me about your show. Tell me about where the idea came from. Because had you already had it in your mind at the LA Podfest that you wanted to start a podcast? Or what
No, I wasn't really
that?
considering ever doing a podcast at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought podcasts were like a fun little pastime. And as it went on, I was like, well, why don't I just make my own podcast? And I think what I wanted to do initially, and still kind of want to do, is make just a platform where I can talk to people and sort of have it in an entertaining fashion. And yeah, that's still pretty much what it is. It's just sort of an entertaining fashion with sort of the loose backbone of, we're just out of college and we're trying to find our place in the world. We're almost adults, which is the title of the show. So
you have your own podcast. You are the host. You're a co-host, actually, of Almost Adults. And your co-host is a friend from college, Jean-Claude.
Jean-Claude Guidi. Yeah. Excellent guy. He could probably tell you better than me how exactly we came up with the podcast. I just know I wanted to start a podcast, and I thought Jean-Claude would be a good guy, but I hadn't talked to him in a while. So I talked to him, and then initially he thought he was the guest. But then I brought him on for the next episode, and I'm like, no, I thought we agreed it was going to be a normal thing. And he's like, oh, okay. And
really? He thought he was the guest of your podcast, and then he realized you were asking him to be the co-host.
Yeah, exactly. He kept calling me the host. Like, for the first 5 episodes, you can hear him say, oh, well, Gage is the host of this podcast. And I kept having to correct him and say, no, I'm the co-host, because we're in this together. And so now he's accepted his fate as the co-host.
And you guys have great camaraderie.
Thank you. Yeah. I feel like I can't really put it into words. I think that we understand each other to a point, and we understand sort of our artistic struggles, because we constantly struggle from being creative and being practical, which is something I've always struggled with. I know Jean-Claude struggled with, because Jean-Claude studied to be a doctor, and at the same time he wanted to do these creative things like draw or animate. He still does them, but he's like applying to med schools like crazy. And I don't know. I feel like he's more relaxed when he does the creative and the doctor thing at the same time.
Left brain, right brain.
Yeah, that's what we discussed on our podcast.
Appeasing both sides.
Appeasing both sides, yeah.
I understand the tendency of, you were talking about practical versus like the creative side for podcasting. I feel
Not just for podcasting, that sort of applies to everything.
Yeah, for everything. I was thinking specifically about with this art form because there's the administrative side of it, and then there's also the visionary side of it with like who you want to have on your show, and you want to conduct your interview and the things that you want to ask and the flow of it. And then there's like the very administrative side of like understanding Libsyn and, following through on your Patreon. And
right.
What I was trying to say is you guys have a good camaraderie. I feel like the chemistry is really good. And, it's nice to do things with another person.
Right. Yeah. I can't imagine doing a podcast by myself because normally I get very nervous, and you can see in some of the podcasts where I bring on someone that I don't know too personally, and I get very nervous. I start stuttering, and I make jokes when I shouldn't. But I'm learning to get better at that, and Jean-Claude was really good at picking up the slack. Like for the Rice Pirate episode, I remember there was a time where my microphone was mute for 15 minutes, and Jean-Claude just picked up the slack every time there was like a lull. He's like, oh, so Mick, what are some of the things that you did throughout your college and your acting career? Then I came back, I'm like, whoa, my mic was on mute, whoa.
And you had no idea it was on mute.
I had no idea on mute. I just kept trying to interject, and I'm like, oh, and they kept talking over me. It's a funny story now, but I was terrified about looking unprofessional in front of Mick because he's one of those guys that Jean-Claude and I look really up to.
What are some things that you do for yourself now if you're feeling nervous, about interviewing or just having your guest on? Because it's actually kind of funny because I imagine the guest is probably nervous too. And you as the host, you already are, both of you guys are very generous hosts. You guys do a great job of listening and making room for your guest to share. So I feel like you already put people at ease. So it's funny to hear you say that you get nervous, but I know, I get nervous too. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that you do now?
Well, yeah, it's funny that you say that because whenever I approach that person, someone I don't know personally, I have no fear because I'm like, okay, the worst they can say is no, and I move on. Mm-hmm. And I'm always taken aback when they say yes because, sorry, I'm pulling like a politician. I'm like, well, you said this, but I'm going to loop around and say something else.
You can do it. Loop around. Do that.
But
loop.
Yeah, I'm bringing it back. Don't worry. So yes, I get very nervous when talking because everybody who I have on the podcast, in one way or another, I like them and or respect them. Mm-hmm. And when I get nervous, I just pause, take a step back, recollect my thoughts, and then proceed again.
So you slow down.
Yes, I just slow down a bit because when I get nervous, I start talking really fast, and I go, I'm sorry, and I keep apologizing when I have nothing to apologize for.
Yeah.
What do you do?
When I get nervous, I tend also to slow down and then focus. I give myself the chance to focus because I realize, I'm sitting with another person and I really like this person and I genuinely want to know about them. The thought process is, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I say something that is a trigger for them, even though who would ever know what triggers other people?
Yeah,
no one
does.
Yeah. And also the thing is people like to talk about themselves and everyone likes to be, asked questions. So, and I have lots of questions for people. So I just try to chill out.
All right.
But
podcasting tips and tricks with Colleen and Gage.
Yeah. How to interview your guest and not sweat.
I feel like I'm sweating all over the place, but
right now?
Yeah, I feel like I'm sweating right now because, I don't know, I'm getting fatter, I guess.
You think you're gaining weight?
I think I'm gaining weight, yeah. And whenever I gain weight, I start sweating when other people are like, I'm fine.
Oh, that's so interesting. So your body is detoxifying.
I guess.
Maybe.
I don't know.
What makes you think you're gaining weight?
What makes I'm just not eating as well as I can. I don't exercise anymore because when I get up early, I'm normally doing something creative with my time, like I'm editing the podcast, I'm writing a new video, I'm doing something with the time where I should be working on my body, but instead I'm working on whatever project is in front of me.
Your beach body.
My beach bod. Yeah, look at all the ladies. I flex my muscles. I'm the coolest cat on the beach.
What kinds of people do you feel like you relate to the most? Do you feel like you relate to mostly everybody, or because you can talk to a lot of people? You're good at it. You have a great personality. I personally feel you are a great addition to the ecosystem of Los Angeles, and insofar as balancing out the people who are here. You're incredibly generous. You help out with other people's podcasts. You bring people onto your own show and let them talk about themselves, and you create these spaces for people, and you also create space for yourself. It's an excellent balance, which you said balance was like your thing
word
for
of
this
the
year. Yeah.
I don't know what my word of 2017 is, but I love the word balance because I'm not very good at it. And I have to sort of keep reminding myself that that's okay to be a little more gracious to the creative side. It's a little more gracious to be on the practical side. I'm sorry, what was the question?
What kinds of people you like to be around?
What kind of people I like to... People with passions, people who aren't satisfied or comfortable sort of where they are. And that sounds a little, I don't know, bad that people are like... most people are like, you have to be comfortable in the position you're in. And I'm not. And I think that's what drives me. And it really resonated with me listening to the Hamilton musical and just listening to him, Lin-Manuel Miranda, singing He's Never Satisfied. And he's in the character of Alexander Hamilton, but I think that goes for the actor himself too, because he wrote that play, he stars in the play, he directed the play. That really resonated with me, never being satisfied and always working towards your legacy. And I think building sort of my legacy here, man, I shouldn't be thinking about this. I'm 22. I should be out having a good time and like meeting girls or something. I don't know. I'm
not throwing away my shot. That's a song. We could just quote. Me.
We could just we could just swap Hamilton quotes.
That's the song that I listen to, and I'm like, I need to stand in the face of whatever my fears are and make stuff happen. Do not throw away your shot, Colleen, because you're, worried about what someone might think about this or how someone's going to react to this. Just do it.
Well, I also think that not throwing away your shot it's not in the spur of the moment thing, as he's sort of illustrating right there. I believe your shot is just your life. You just go throughout your life, and it's you got one life to live. And his shot was rising up at that sort of exact time, but hell, my shot could be 20 years later, just moving to science or something.
Opportunity.
I
was actually wondering if you would like to listen to the audio clip for the voicemail that you left for Thank You Internet.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it in a while, so I'm game.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Thank You Internet.
A sincere love letter to everything the internet has to offer.
My name is David Spencer.
And I'm Michael Hunter. All right, so who do we have next?
All right, well, we got one more message to play. This comes from fan of the show, friend of the show, Gage Agnew.
Hi, my name is Gage Agnew. I've been mentioned on this podcast a few times. I met David at LA Podfest, and through him I met Michael, and we went and saw a Tupperware Remix Party together. And so you may recognize me, and if not, that's fine too. This is my story of thanking the internet. A little background on me. In middle school, I was very introverted. I was afraid of what people thought of me, so I couldn't speak to people. I couldn't even answer a question from a teacher. It was that bad. And in high school, I learned this wonderful way to express myself. And it's called making movies. And through these movies, I could express myself. I was fascinated with the idea that I could create this world, and through the characters and plot, I could invoke emotion, mainly laughter for me. Fast forward 5 years at Florida State University with my major being digital media production. I had to make a short film, and I was really invested in the band Ninja Sex Party at the time. And I wanted to make a fan film, and I was really nervous to pitch it, but I emailed them, and I got a response saying, yes, you can use our likeness and songs. That was very nice of them. Even though I was really nervous, I pitched the project, and because of my passion, it got picked, and I had a great time making it. Cut to that summer, I'm not with the same people I was when I made that film. I'm with a whole new set of people, and I'm having trouble fitting in. And these anxieties that I haven't had since middle school start bubbling up again. What if I'm not good enough? What do I need to change about myself to fit with these people? So a few weeks pass, and I saw this tweet from Ninja Sex Party. One of their band members, Brian, was doing a live recording of his podcast. By the way, his podcast, The Story Collider, it's pretty good. It's about how science affects people's and their story that goes along with it. Naturally, I really wanted to go to this, and so I invited everyone, and nobody wanted to go. He came up to me and congratulated me on it. I was amazed. And I've even seen Brian a few times since then, and he's recognized me for it. Now, I say this not to be boastful, but to tell people a few things. One, if there's an opportunity out there that you really, really want, go for it. There might be a few obstacles. People might look down on you. Don't worry about it. Just take it one step at a time. Two, don't be afraid of what you like, whether it be a band or a movie. Just, you like what you like. We're in the age of the internet. You're going to find someone who likes that same thing. And third, even though it might be a cliche, just be yourself. Just be you. No one does better of being you than yourself. Now, I know that's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. You can't imitate someone or act differently because certain people are around you. Just be you. And I learned all that because of the internet. My name is Gage Agnew, and thank you, internet.
Thank you so much, Gage. Seriously, man.
I love the way that you left that voicemail. I love the setup of the story. I love the way that you told your story in that like small time frame.
I thought it was shorter, actually. When I heard it, I'm like, oh, this is going on for a while. But yeah, I never really had a problem sort of speaking from the heart as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever people ask me their honest opinions, I feel like I shift as like a person to sort of my serious mode, being like, you can't really be unfocused. You gotta keep your eyes on the prize as it is. Everyone on my podcast makes me want to be a better artist or a better person.
I think you've bridged the gap perfectly on your podcast between networking and talent. Like the question that you asked, you know, I feel like you've brought it. You've created it.
I never really thought about that. I guess there is sort of that bridge between knowing who you are and where you came from being like who you want to be. Something I've struggled with an awful lot, and it was especially bad in college, was trying to be the person who I think my friends wanted to be. And whenever I tried to do something different, they're like, that's not really what we do. That's not really what we listen to or what we watch. Mm-hmm. I feel like I didn't express my individuality till college. Also, those relationships just weren't worth keeping. That sounds bad that you have to drop relationships, but it's a part of life. You gotta sort of decide who you want to keep in your life. And sure, you could text that person who just responds with, good, okay, yeah. You could keep that person around, but why would you want to? Would that help you? Do they care about you the same way you care about them? And in my situation, they don't really care about me as much as I care about them. And yeah, that's another thing I struggle with, caring too much about people.
I would say that's a pretty good struggle right there, Gage Agnew.
Yeah, there's definitely worse problems to have, but
you're definitely a good friend.
Thank you.
Back to your voicemail that you left on that episode. Yeah, on the Thanksgiving episode for Thank You Internet. You had mentioned that you were very introverted growing up.
Yes.
And that your discovery of filmmaking has helped you to, figure out a way to express yourself and to come out of your shell a little bit. And then, so since you've been doing your podcast, has that also been a means to getting you even more out of introversion?
Oh, yeah. I would 100% agree with that, because whenever I try to talk to a person, I can't just have a normal conversation with them. I need them to have them on my podcast.
Really? Is that how you feel? Like when you meet someone, you just want to...
Yeah, sometimes. If I'm really interested in a person, I'm like, oh, can me and Jean-Claude talk to you on our podcast? Mm-hmm. And that was sort of how I met my friend Nino, who is on the most recent episode 19, as of this recording. That's how we sort of bonded over, acting and being creative. And it's also a way to help keep up with old friends. Like I said before, I didn't really talk to Jean-Claude as much. Now that we have a podcast, we have to talk like every 2 weeks now. Mm-hmm. Little things keep us going, like this guy named Quackatron 3000, I think he's known on YouTube. He did like a small animation for Almost Adults. And we're like, whoa, people are animating what we talk about. That's fascinating. That's great to me, man. That keeps me going.
Yeah, how do you find your guests for your show?
Guests, just whoever I think are interesting. But
you guys kind of tend to focus more on certain types of artists, right? People who have contributed to the internet in some way, it seems like.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just sort of the people we either grew up with or started listening to. I mainly send out the emails like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? Mm-hmm. More often than not, they're pretty jazzed to be on a podcast. Mm-hmm. So,
would you say that you are a classic millennial?
I've never really liked that word, millennial.
What word do you like?
Human being? I don't know. People often associate that with a very negative context. And they're like, oh, you're a millennial. You don't look up from your phone. You're very antisocial. You're not voting for Hillary Clinton. And yeah, a lot of millennials are like, oh, Bernie or bust, which I think is a little silly, but whatever, politics. And I think people look down on millennials, even if we sort of own the word. People just kind of give us a smug look about it. Mm-hmm. So I do think I am a millennial, whether I want to admit it or not. But what I'm trying to get at is that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Why do you ask?
I was wondering if you relate to your generation. Because you're not totally at the cusp, but I was just reading that 18 and under is considered the Z generation right now. I mean, millennials are also the Y generation, but you guys have this nickname, millennials, and you're at the tail end of millennials.
I don't know, man. I feel so like disconnected to whatever's going on, and like, what is the idea of this generation? What is like the general idea? I have no idea. What does that mean anymore? Like, I don't want to sound too hippy dippy, but I don't know what we all agree on, and who cares, honestly, in the end, what we think the consensus is. We're individual people.
When you say general idea, do you mean like a direction? Like, where are we going with this?
Well, when I say general idea, I don't know exactly what I mean, to be honest. I feel like what everyone is sort of agreeing on nowadays. I'm so disconnected from it. I'm in my own world, man. I'm just doing what I love. I'm doing stories, I'm writing, and when all these crazy things are going on, I just kind of shrug, and I'm like, that's not my place to judge. My job is to make stories. So that's what I want to do.
What are your hopes and goals right now, like for Almost Adults and in your life?
For Almost Adults, I want to have 25 episodes by the end of the year, and one of those 25 episodes will be a Christmas special. I wanted to do more videos, sort of either animations or sketches based off topics we talked about, or like little vlogs that we do. Don't make it just about like podcasting,
right?
Because I feel like you're really limiting yourself if you do that. So,
and what are you watching currently?
I'm watching a lot of Ash versus Evil Dead, and Evil Dead has always been one of my favorite franchises. It's the right amount of goofy, it's the right amount of gory. I think horror and comedy sort of go hand in hand. They have similar beats, and I don't think a lot of people kind of realize that and combined it. And another thing I watch is Fargo, just because it's excellent storytelling and excellent characters all around. Very relatable characters. I listen a lot to Sleepy Cabin or Sleepy Cast, as I mentioned before. Mick is part of that. Mick the Rice Pirate. The Hellbenders. Zach Hadel, also known as Psychic Pebbles. Chris O'Neill, Oni G, who was one of the original Flash animators on this old site called Newgrounds, which I think you should check out. What else am I listening? I'm listening to Thank You Internet and Weird Alphabet, of course. I'm listening to mostly Minutia.
Are you reading anything right now? Do you read much?
I don't read much, no.
You read stuff on your phone?
Twitter.
Yeah. Your Twitter feed.
I read my Twitter feed. Does that count? Oh, I'm currently reading this cool book that Mick recommended to me called Scud, which is about like a disposable assassin that you get from like a vending machine. And when they kill whatever target you head out, they explode, but one of them becomes self-aware. It's this really cool thing. It was made by Rob Schrab, who's doing the Lego movie sequel, and Dan Harmon, who created Community, and it's one of their earlier pieces, and I like it a lot.
Well, I wanted to thank you for coming on to my show.
Is it over already? I'm having such a good time talking to you.
Now, I know we're recording this before Halloween, which is probably why you're watching Evil Dead.
Yes.
But this is going to be played this is going to be posting during Thanksgiving.
Hooray!
So I'm wondering if there's anything that you're thankful for.
Too many things to count. I'm going to kick myself for forgetting after I record. I'm going to be on the way back. I'm like, I should have thanked this person. But I'm thankful for all my teachers. Shane Sauer, as I mentioned before. Kristen Bass-Peterson, love her. Deirdre Morales, my writing teacher. Pilar Alessandra, who taught me some of the writing techniques that I use. And people who have taught me over the years. My cousin Spencer is a huge influence on me. I love him. Thank you very much. My mother and father, of course, my siblings. I love them all, even though I give them so much shit. And
this is like an acceptance speech.
Yeah, don't play music over me. Yeah, I want to thank John Claude too a lot because he stuck through me through a lot of creative things that I've done. So he's been an awesome creative partner. I want to thank Carlos. He did a short film with me called Basic Training for our college web series called Chronos. I want to thank Thomas, who's helped me write. I want to thank Tony Prettyman, who I met in Shane Sauer's class, who gave me a bunch of shit when I first met him. And he's become a really good friend. And God, I'm going to forget so many people. Gosh, David and Michael, of course, who encouraged me to do the podcast. Sophia Monroe, who I met as like a production coordinator over at Defy Media. She's been incredibly nice. She texted me just yesterday. She's like, "How are you doing?" I don't know. And honestly, I've been feeling down about myself lately because I feel like I've been in a bit of a rut. And she's like, "Just keep going."
Why were you feeling like you were in a rut?
Well, I
wonder if other people are feeling that way too.
I feel like I don't do as much creative things as I can. I don't do as many different things as I possibly can. And I feel like I'm not sort of progressing anywhere career-wise. And like I would love if podcasting was my full-time job or video production was my full-time job, but it's not going to happen overnight. And when you work at it for so long, you become jaded. You're like, oh, no one listens to this. And you kind of got to do it sort of an organic way and have people hear about it. You can't like post about it all the time on Facebook, or you can't constantly bother people to listen to your podcast or watch your video or whatever. You just kind of got to let it happen and hope people enjoy it. So I think the main reason I've sort of been feeling down and out, even when I have these incredible people cheering me on, is that I'm not satisfying myself. And I don't think I'll ever be satisfied doing what I'm doing now. So I got to change myself.
Maybe you need to go take a trip to the Getty. Let some art wash over you, clean your soul.
Yeah, and
then reorient
that's
your
why
mind.
I like doing things like this. I like hearing other people's perspective. I like hearing other people's stories, and it encourages me to go forward just even a little bit, man.
Yeah. Well, I've been recently discovering dance like over the last year of my life, and that helps me a lot. Because for me, I need to completely be like sweat like crazy and be drenched. And then I'll be like, oh, I'm feeling better.
Yeah, really exercise would help me. I think that's important, making time for yourself. And I'm not very good at that.
I was at Gelson's yesterday, which I rarely go to Gelson's, but this 71-year-old man came over to me and he was telling me, he's like, excuse me. He's like, the only thing that's important is your happiness. And he said, the first thing that's important is you. And then the second thing that's important is you. And then the third thing that's important is then your circle. Anyway, I don't know why he just wanted to talk to me.
You do look approachable. I don't know how to sort of explain it.
People really come over to me and they tell me about their lives, or they'll tell me about something, whatever's on their mind.
Sometimes you just want to be by yourself, man.
Well, sometimes I can't tell, especially if it's males doing it. I can't tell if they're doing it because they're trying to be dominating. I've experienced that before.
What?
Yeah, for some reason they'll want to come over to me and like explain how I should live my life.
Are they mansplaining?
Yes, they are mansplaining. And I just look at them like, why? What possessed you to want to come over and tell me this right now?
I don't know what it is, but I think people, I don't know who gave a pass for like, I never get approached, dude. And whenever I talk to a female about this, they're like, yeah, I get approached all the time. I'm like, why does everyone approach me?
Oh, well, wait, so you want to be approached? Who do you want to be approached by?
Hot ass cuties, baby.
Where are you hanging out these days?
Rouse.
Which aisle?
Mainly I'm in the cereal aisle. I like cereal. Shout out to my buddy Hans.
Yeah, what kind of cereal?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch is a favorite of mine.
That is good.
It is good.
Gosh.
I don't know what possesses people to be like, oh, I can approach women. Part of me wants to be like, well, if you want to hit on them, just cut straight to the chase and say I'm hitting on you.
That would be easier because I sometimes...
And just be like, yes, no, just Tinder that shit.
Just swipe. I'll just swipe.
Yeah,
into
just
the air.
like take their face and just swipe them.
I feel like we can go off and do a whole new podcast about this.
Hell
So we'll
yeah.
have to...
If you want to listen to part 2.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to thank you so much for just giving me a little bit of your time this morning. And
of course, I had
finally,
a fantastic time. Finally, I had a fantastic time. Let's do it again sometime.
Okay, agreed.
Oh, my friend Gage is gonna talk to you. Oh, and John Clark, he'll be there. Oh, too, even though they're not close together, they're far away. There, one's in Tampa, the other one's in LA. Oh, Gage, what's the show called again?
Fucking, it's almost adults. Shit.
Almost adult. Shit.
Thank you to Gage Agnew, Jean-Claude Guidi, David Spencer, Michael Hunter, Marc Maron, and the artist Home, whose track Bright Lights in Silent Rooms is playing under this. That's off the album Falling Into Place. You can find more of Home at bandcamp.com and SoundCloud. If you're interested in hearing Gage and Jean-Claude do a smashingly great job of interviewing their guests, head to iTunes and check out their show, Almost Adults. There you can also find WTF with Marc Maron and Thank You Internet with David Spencer and Michael Hunter. Also, Gage does a live stream of him editing every Monday and Wednesday from 4 to 7 a.m. on Twitch TV. That's twitch.tv/Gage K. Agnew. Lastly, on this Thanksgiving, I'm very thankful for your selflessness in taking time out of your busy schedule or your commute or your walk or hike or train ride to listen to these stories that I put together. And actually, you never know. Maybe one day it'll be your story we're listening to. I'm holding out for that day. Until then, know I'm thankful for the trivial details that make up your life, aka the minutia, because it's the minutia that makes your life interesting. Happy Thanksgiving. This episode of Mostly Minutia was recorded on location in my apartment in Glendale, California.